Well, good morning. I figured I've been looking at this random stuff all night long, and it started kind of giving me the question of is the democratic machine actually just been moved to the national level versus what it used to be, which was just confined to cities? So I guess to start off, we kind of have to define what the political machine is. And basically, it is a tightly organized hierarchical party organization, often led by a single boss or small group that commands enough votes to maintain political and administrative control over a city, county, or state. These organizations, prevalent in the 19th and 20th centuries, engage services such as jobs, housing, or aid for immigrants, for loyal votes, acting with high efficiency to win elections. So we'll just kind of look at the video, kind of explaining more or less what it is.
As cities and populations boomed, new political structures fought over power. Local governments began to grow more and more inefficient. Politicians sought to manipulate voters and gain power for themselves. This leads to the urban political machine. The political machine was an organized group of political officials who controlled activities of a political party within a city. Think of a clubhouse or a fraternity in politics. With migration and urbanization, political parties sought to take advantage of chaos to control political office. They would accomplish this goal by manipulating voters. Officials of the political machine gave favors and perks to voters and businesses in return for support at the ballot box. The idea was you get my back and I'll get yours.
The structure of the political machine was set up like a pyramid. At the top, we have the city boss. The city boss controlled most local services and chose candidates to elect. Often, the city boss was the most powerful man in the city. Next, in the middle, we have ward bosses. Ward bosses gave local favors and ensured precinct votes were secured. The ward bosses reported to the city boss and delivered on promises that were given to the voters. And finally, at the bottom, we have block captains and precinct workers. These members rounded up voters in neighborhoods and city blocks. They escorted voters to the ballot box in order to make sure they voted the way they wanted them to.
The city boss ran the political machine. The process begins when the city boss selects a candidate for public office. This candidate usually was in the pocket of the city boss and was nothing but a puppet or a lackey who would do the bidding of the city boss once elected to office, ensuring that the city boss maintains power and keeps the political machine prosperous. The city boss could promise jobs, housing, citizenship, favorable decisions in court, and other perks, and he would hand down the ability to deliver on these promises to the ward bosses. Reporting to the ward bosses were the block captains and precinct workers, who had direct contact with the voters. Once promises were made, voters would then go to the ballot box on election day and vote for the candidate that had been selected by the city boss.
So for that, I kind of just copy pasted this image and more or less just made it into what we are, or what what we saw with like the Kamala Harris being selected, and then you can even go as far back as even having Bernie Sanders being kicked out of the DNC. So basically, it's the same idea. You have the DNC, the major donors, and the think tanks selecting their candidate, and they bribe the electorate with funding, their government resources, their regulatory power, citizenship, and court decisions. Then they influence the voters through education, the media, and the big tech platforms, which we saw a lot of in 2020, and all the censorship and all the right leaning social media personalities getting banned or shadow banned as well. And then they all more or less go down to the NGOs and activists who then organize and facilitate the voters to go for the selected candidate that really they really didn't have much of a say in what was happening. So once again, it's just the exact same cycle, just in a more national uh, theater.
Ensuring that the political machine's candidate won and keeping the city boss in control of political affairs within the city.
Political machines preyed on newly arrived immigrants and struggling businesses the most. They took advantage of culture shock, promised housing, jobs, and quick naturalization for worried new immigrants. They hired second-generation immigrants to speak to newly arriving immigrants in their native language.
Bill's got mixed feelings as regards the Irish.
Bill, deliver these good and fervent folk to the polls on a regular basis, and there'll be a handsome price for each vote goes Tammany's way.
Businesses could get quick licenses and bypass paperwork. They could also see competitors disappear in return for cash and votes.
So what's the benefit to the city boss and the political machine? Why start a political machine in the first place? The answer is graft. Graft is the illegal use of political power for personal gain. Here's how it worked. Machines would get monetary kickbacks for employment. They would have workers overbill cities for jobs done, like building bridges, public transportation, streets, and buildings, and then skim the extra money off the top and pocket it for themselves. They controlled the police department so that the cops would look the other way. In order to keep power, political machines grew desperate. They would commit voter fraud when enough votes couldn't be bought. This included having voters vote multiple times in an election. It also included using fake names and late-night trips to the cemetery, where the names of dead people would be taken off tombstones and put onto registered voters' lists, where they would vote for the political machine's candidate.
The most famous political machine was Tammany Hall in New York. Run by William Boss Tweed, Tammany Hall's fraud and graft was over the top. For example, the construction cost of New York County Courthouse grew to nearly $13 million, about $178 million in today's dollars. One outrageous example was a carpenter was paid $360,000, roughly $4.9 million in today's money, for 1 month's labor. People began to question the validity of their work, and helped by negative cartoons by Thomas Nast, outrage over their graft led to its downfall. Tweed was arrested and convicted of fraud. Estimates claim that Tweed defrauded New York out of tens of millions of dollars in kickbacks.
So you kind of see the idea there, right? What if you guys don't know about when the Irish Catholics came after the potato famine, they were met on the pier, by representatives of the Democrat Party, and they would be brought into basically apartments. They would be given housing, they were giving jobs, and to include a turkey dinner on Christmas. So what they would do during this time is they would give out all this generosity and all this stuff, and then as soon as it came time to vote, they would have their the block captains and the precinct workers go out and just round them all up and bring them to the polls to have them vote for the candidate that the city boss wanted, which I think is what we're seeing more and more and more now, especially with the Democrat Party. The immigrants got respect from Tammany Hall. Now, whether it was calculated or not is a matter of debate. What they did, in essence, was create an informal social welfare system, and of course, none existed. So that, thankfully, if you were an immigrant and you needed some advice, or you needed a job, or frankly, if you needed some respect, Tammany Hall was willing to give you that. In return, of course, Tammany expects you to turn out early and often and vote on election day. And obviously there was political cartoons about it, and everyone else was coming. And this is back when the New York Times actually was producing news and going against what was being said. And it was even more getting into that idea of unions and all the other things that we see now, primarily from the Democrat Party. This is just once again saying that in the teeming streets of 19th century New York, few political institutions wielded as much influence as Tammany Hall, which was founded in the late 1700s and ordinarily a fraternal organization. Tammany evolved into the undisputed engine of the democratic politics in New York City, which we are still currently seeing all the way through. It was an institution built on patronage, hierarchy, and relentless organization. Once again, very much the Democrat Party we're seeing today. However, its most enduring legacy was in its relationship with the city's Irish immigrant population. This relationship began as a calculated political exploitation, but slowly transformed into a story of mutual reliance and ultimately political empowerment. Over several decades, the Irish Americans would move from the periphery of power into its very center, shaping not only Tammany Hall, but the broader Democratic Party in ways that would define its character for generations. And the roots of this relationship can be traced to the 1840s, when the Great Famine drove hundreds of thousands of Irish people from their homeland, many of them settled in New York City, arriving impoverished, traumatized, and unfamiliar with the language and customs of their new country. To native-born Americans, these Irish immigrants were often viewed as objects of suspicion and disdain. They were Catholic in a predominantly Protestant society and were seen as culturally alien. They were believed to be unfit for civic life, but to the ward bosses and district captains of Tammany Hall, they were a political opportunity. The machine quickly understood that if these newcomers could be integrated into the electorate and be made loyal to the Democrat Party, they could serve as a vast and renewable source of votes. The Irish community, in the face of adversity, showed remarkable resilience and adaptability, turning their perceived weakness into strength. So once again, we're just seeing more that they are aligning themselves with me just to give the Democrat Party more political power in the city. The influence of Irish Americans within the Democrat Party did not remain confined to New York. As they accumulated power and experience, Irish politicians began to assert themselves on state and national stage. The Senator for Al Smith, he rose from the Lower East Side to become governor of New York and a Democratic nominee for president in 1928, symbolizes the ascent of Irish Catholic America. And once again, Smith was deeply connected with Tammany Hall, but also represented a broader transformation. It was said that, which one was it? So, one of the most notable political changes of the past 100 years is the rise and fall of urban patronage machines. In most years between 1865 and 1930, the patronage machines ruled many large cities: St. Louis, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, and Detroit. Imagine that. It's the exact same cities that are extremely, very heavily Democratic today. Which is, this thing never went down. But typically after 1975 is when it's said to stop. Which, funny enough, as soon as the Irish became part of what we now are, they're now just called whites, they started moving towards a new group that they could then say that they were victimized and get another great forever vote of power, which is the Voting Rights Act of 1965. With white men aged 21 and older who owned property, they were given the right to vote in 1776. The 15th Amendment removed racial barriers to voting in 1870, but states continued to practice voter discrimination and continued to deny Black voters a chance to participate in the elections. The right to vote was extended to white women in 1920. And in 1965, after years of intimidation, murders, and advocacy, the path to voting booth was cleared for Black people with the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. So they found their new Irish, who can just plug and play. And that still continues to be seen when they go against our the Republicans want to remove food from you. They want to remove your SNAP benefits, your WIC. They want to destroy and remove all of these benefits that the Democrat Party holds so dear. Like, you deserve a living wage, not a living wage, but you deserve the welfare from the state, and you deserve higher representation, and please be a part of our union. Please give money to us, and we will make sure that we will never let you go hungry, and we will make sure that you will always have the money and the housing subsidies and everything else. And if you go against that, then you're no longer a part of the group. Which we're also seeing rotate along as well, is now that Democrat Party now the Democrat Party is a little bit more scared of the blacks moving towards Republicans, and especially with Donald Trump, how well he was able to connect with the black voters. The Democrat Party is not seeing them as a consistent, reliable source, although they still vote, I want to say 87% for the Democrat Party. They're now moving towards new revenue streams and new people who can then vote them in. And that was highlighted more or less in the mayoral vote, or mayoral debate from the other day.
No.
Mayor Bass,
It depends. It's not a
it's a yes or no question and answer. So there's an LA council member. He wants voters to decide. He is saying that non-citizens, should they be allowed to vote in local elections? Is this a yes or no, Mr. Pratt?
no.
Mayor Bass.
It depends. It's not a
So once again, it depends. It depends if do we need them right now. If it's for local, then absolutely they should be able to vote. It affects them. And then just continuing on into bringing more and more of them into the electorate. And they're really trying to either naturalize all of the illegal immigrants, and they're trying to expand their voting population just off of that. You can even go as far as they're now, with all the fraud that we've been seeing in Minnesota and in California, that are actively being raided.
Detained. 8 people in all were arrested, all of them accused of stealing millions of dollars in Medicare money, a problem we first exposed after finding more than 700 hospice locations across LA County that experts say all had serious signs of fraud.
So there's fraud there.
And now Orion Raish is tracking the money with some eye-popping numbers.
I want to focus on those 9 daycares raided by the feds. We have learned the state sent them $67 million in the last 8 years.
And so that continues on, and then we go to the California Democrat, where their platform. Oppose travel and immigration bans that are solely based on ethnicity, race, religion, or national origin. Oppose detention centers that detain or incarcerate based solely on ethnicity and race. Support efforts that maximize educational opportunities for all immigrant students, including access to public education and financial assistance as an investment for our common future. Affirm efforts to provide equal housing for all immigrants and condemn the conduct that denies equal housing to all, including landlords inquiring into the citizenship or immigration status of a tenant or prospective tenant. Exact same fundamental. You get them over the border, you give them a house, you give them jobs, and then you tell them to come out and vote for you because the Republicans want to take that away from you. It's the exact same formula over and over and over again. Even going to the demand immigration and customs enforcement officers throughout the chain of command comply with all laws and prosecution of those who have violated the law. Advocate for comprehensive immigration reform to make the process more equitable, fair, and transparent. Support efforts to provide an expedited path to citizenship for DACA, which is the same thing that this is. Government resources, funding, citizenship, and the courts. They're all supporting automatic citizenship to children born outside the United States with U.S. citizenship and military service. I think that's kind of a give me, and I think that's even done already. Oppose the expansion of ICE, Border Patrol, and growing police state, which is violating the civil liberties of immigrants in cities. If you limit border control, then you have an unlimited supply of immigrants, which means you'll have an unlimited supply of votes. It's just continuing on, continuing on. And I kind of went through this just to even prove it further of who is receiving the social net benefits. you can select, this is all per capita. You're able to select sex, race, and all the other things. And of course, it crashes. But I was smart and I decided to break it down already. So I changed it out by race. So for Medicaid, it's about 17% higher. SNAP, almost double. WIC, double. Free or reduced price school meals, almost double. SSI is about double. Energy aid is double. Rental subsidies is insane. Social Security makes sense, right? You pay into it, you get it at the end. Medicare can be a part of Social Security, but it's also a separate thing. So I consider these two things a wash. And then your unemployment compensation, 0.9, 0.8. So it's, those two are at least relatively close. But once again, it's just showing more and more of the big differences here, that they're once again just bribing the electorate. You will come and vote for us, or Republicans are going to hurt these programs, and we pay you free money to just go be a part of them. And to continue on, the selected candidate, you can replace this with Hillary Clinton in 2016, when they just nominated, when there was leaked emails of the DNC coming out and plotting against Bernie Sanders, who was doing very, very well.
Trump tonight seizing on a controversy brewing for Democrats after thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton. And as ABC's Mary Bruce reports, a response tonight from the Sanders campaign.
Tonight, a major snag on the road to party unity. WikiLeaks releasing nearly 20,000 internal DNC emails, including some that appear to show efforts to undercut the rise of Bernie Sanders. In one, a communications official considers pushing the narrative that Bernie never ever had his act together, that his campaign was a mess. In another, a top official wonders, can we get someone to ask his belief? Does he believe in a God? Adding my Southern Baptist peeps would draw a big difference between a Jew and an atheist. The response? An amen. From the start, Sanders voiced concerns that the scale was tipped in Clinton's favor. It was even the butt of jokes.
Remember all those states like Wyoming where you beat me by a lot, but then I still got most of the delegates?
Oh my God! That was so stupid! It's rigged!
I know, it's so rigged!
Tonight, Sanders' supporters are furious. His campaign manager telling ABC it's a clear example of the DNC taking sides and that somebody has to be held accountable.
So once again, we're seeing them just prop up a candidate for you to vote on. I went through, and this is the 2016 ballot, which makes more sense to me, right? That you have your two leading nominees, and it kind of makes sense on that they're more or less evenly split, but with democracy in the way it is, and the states giving their delegates, Clinton obviously wins by a little under 1,000. And now let's fast forward to Harris being selected to be the nominee. It's very interesting that there's not a second column, because she was just selected, and it was a kind of a test to see, would the Democrat Party rally behind her and still elect her, even though not a single vote was cast for her throughout any of which through primaries or anything like that. So kind of going back to a lot of this as well, if you go through and go to FDR, you kind of set up the welfare state precedent as well. And because he's decided to stay in power for, what was it, 4 terms? I think he died in his 4th term, which let Harry Truman take over. So we continue to see that issue play out. I did decide to go through and ask, and I said to bring it all back to political machines. The Democrat Party says this is our candidate who we support through massive think tanks and NGOs. If you vote for him, you will get the welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, and WIC. But if you vote for the other guy, he's going to take that away from you. We can. This is all through Grok. The vote for benefits transaction, vote for our slate, and we'll give you a job, cold winter, a turkey at Christmas, help with the police and citizenship papers. Exactly what we're seeing with Democrat Party now. The modern version, especially visible in the Democrat messaging, support our candidates and we will protect, expand Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP, food stamps, WIC, housing subsidies, student debt relief, and the other side wants to cut them. The other side wants you to pay your student loan debts that you signed up for willingly. And it continues on the same exact idea. It's not hidden. The Democratic campaigns and aligned groups routinely frame elections as existential threats to these programs. Examples include repeating warnings that Republicans will gut Medicare or take away your health care. This creates dependency-based loyalty, just as the old machines did exactly. Today, a vast network of think tanks, Center for American Progress, Brookings, Urban Institute, NGOs, advocacy groups, Planned Parenthood, media outlets, and donor networks that develop, defend, and promote these programs. They provide policy messaging, legal defense, and get out the vote operations. This is far more professionalized and better funded than Tammany Hall ever was because it's on a national scale. They all just looked at how they ran these these cities and just built them up to be the ideal of how to get people to vote for you is you just bribe their electorate, which is the problem once again with universal suffrage is you're able to vote, you're able to bribe certain parts of the electorate that you want to vote for you, and you push out the vote, and it's almost to the point of like they'll bring you to the voting booth and make sure you vote. Think of like all the we have to have mail-in ballots. If we don't have mail-in ballots, then we might not get the votes that we need, and it's shown as like, oh, they're trying to suppress your vote, but that's not what this is at all. But we're seeing this more at the bottom line. The Democratic Party and aligned institutions does use the welfare and entitlement state as a core electoral strategy, protect and expand benefits, secure votes from recipients and brother coalition that supports them. This is a direct evolution of the machine politics, nationalized, legalized, bureaucratized, and supercharged by think tanks, NGOs, and permanent government programs rather than cash in and envelope local bosses. This effective coalition maintains, but critics slightly point out it creates dependency. Fiscal unsustainability, entitlements drive most long-term debt projections and distorts elections towards don't bite the hand that feeds you incentives rather than broader national interests. The New Deal planted the seed, the Great Society watered it, today's version is the matured tree. Both parties participate in politics, but the modern democratic approach is the closest direct tied descendant of the old urban machines in structure and intent. So once again, I'll just bring it back up. With all the fraud and corruption that we were seeing in the urban machines and why they were rooted out, mostly because they were arrested. Some leaders fled to other countries and then were brought back, died in prison. It was seen as extremely corrupt and riddled with fraud. Like they were saying, you're paying billions of dollars for a building that should have only cost a couple thousand, or especially nowadays, a couple $1 billion for a building that should have cost a 500 million. And all that money is being skimmed off the top to these companies. I mean, look how long the California state legislature has been under construction for. Think about all the extra money that's going into the Federal Reserve that they paid for. This is just continuous examples of how they are using their the government's money to influence the electorate and the populations to vote for them in the office, saying, oh no, if you vote for this other group, they are going to cut what we're giving you for free. And all you have to do is come out and vote for us. Don't think too hard about it. Just come out and do it, and that's the end of it. Once again, I'm going to probably post all these links in the Discord so you guys can go through them, watch them, to include like the Cato Institute and all the other insane parts of all of this. I did actually go back and look because the argument I can see coming against this, because the Irish, when they came over, they were seeing the Irish Catholics, they were let's see, because I asked about this versus Islam, right? So they thought there's religious prejudice, economic, cultural, and ethics stereotypes, and political nativism. And then I decided to try to make it argue that there's no difference between the two, just to see what AI would come up with. And basically what it came down to is the it brings up the European no-go zones that are now expanding, which is why you're seeing the rise ups that you're seeing in the UK and throughout Europe. US has advantages: higher skilled selected immigrants historically, melting pot pressure, lower welfare dependency traps, and geographic dispersion. But chain migration plus refugee policies like the Somalis created concentrated failures mirroring Europe. Minnesota and Dearborn, Michigan, high Arab Muslim percentage are closest to US analogs to European problems. If volumes increase without a better vetting or assimilation demands, English, secular law, supremacy, value screening, enclaves like the Meadow proposals or Minnesota-style issues will multiply. Irish Catholics assimilated because their faith didn't carry the same supremacist political project as the Islamist strains. The US model works better when it enforces boundaries, not open-ended multiculturalism. This continues to bring on the fact that it's also that it said that there was secular law, which I of course said that we were never based off of secular law, that US law is based on Christian ethics, and that helped reinforce the Irish being able to assimilate much easier. The Islamist strains often bring in a different framework. Sharia law as a total system: personal, family, criminal, political. The core elements are like unequal rights, the supremacy of Islamic law over man-made law, create friction within the U.S. Constitution's equality, free speech, religious liberty, and secular governance. Recent congressional hearings especially addressed why political Islam Islam institutions are seen as incompatible by many, citing parallel tribunals, family law overrides, etc. Most American Muslims live peacefully under U.S. law and reject extremism. Proposed incidents in enclaves, Minnesota fraud, terrorism pipelines, Dearborn protests, proposed developments show subsets prioritizing Sharia over full assimilation. The Christian ethical substrate gave Irish Catholics a cultural on-ramp. No equivalent bridge exists for Orthodox Islamist ideology, which is why selective immigration assimilation demands supremacy of the Constitution, English and secular phobic law, and honest debate matter more here than in the 1950s. The U.S. system's strength is its ability to absorb compatible groups while rejecting incompatible parallel legal systems. But as you can see, we're seeing it from, you can even go as far as the Pope going and praying with the Hindus, praying with the Muslims, saying that they are close to us in our religion, that we worship the same God, and that they're not all that different than what they really are. But with Sharia law, it is just completely incompatible with the U.S. Christian law and what we were founded on, which is what we are continuing to see through all of this. Um, but I think in the end, we still continue to see the the Democratic political machine being used to get their electors and their representatives selected. It doesn't matter really who is brought up by the people. It's these think tanks and these groups that are actually selecting the candidates that you want, that they want. So no one voted for Kamala to become the candidate for the next for the 2024-25 election. The DNC, major donors, and think tanks did. There isn't a single Republican candidate that has been brought forward in at least modern history. I don't think that there's ever been one that was just selected by a think tank to be the nominee, and everyone just has to get in line and vote for it. Yes, I know this is created like a 5-year-old, but it's fine. This movement all the way down is just a larger, more nationalized version of the Democrat political machine, also rife with corruption, fraud, and taking advantage of our system, meanwhile playing to the emotions and the helplessness of everyone. And even to the point of demonizing and going after all of our institutions, going after you see them going after the Christians, you see them going after, if you're white, you're a problem. If you don't agree, if you're black and you don't go with us, oh, you're an Uncle Tom, and all the other bullshit that they come out and say. They will flip race on you as very quickly as soon as they can, as long as they can make you follow what they want and want you to be. The very second you come out against them, look at Donald Trump for all of his career in media, in all the policies. Donald Trump was he's a early 2000s, 1990s Democrat. All of his talking points are the Democrat Party's talking points. And as soon as he went against them, wanted to go against the fraud, wanted to go against all these things, they immediately went after him for everything and anything that they could, just to once again show that and turn him into the bad guy, to show him that he wasn't selected by the establishment. So now we are going to see the person who we want to be for the establishment. Look at Clinton, selected by the establishment. Look at Biden, selected by the establishment. And Biden's, even his 4 years, you had the media going through and saying, "Oh no, look, he's running circles around everyone." You had education going around saying that he was for the worker, and look at the education system now. It's completely filled with nothing but progressives. I have family that are teachers, and they are terrified to say anything, because if they speak up and say anything, then their job can be in jeopardy. The institution can turn on them at the drop of a hat. And you go to the big tech platforms, and Facebook and Twitter before Elon Musk bought it, and their censoring and their banning of right-wing influencers in droves. They had to go and testify to Congress, and basically said, yeah, the government came up and said, this is what we want you to say about the vid, and this is what we want you to say about this. And anyone who says differently, throw up a notice that this is false or misinformation and all those other things. And you have your NGO and activists going out, and the NGOs funding and organizing and getting these other groups together, like the No Kings protests that were out, and the Black Lives Matter protests. All these protests are all funded by these NGOs. That's why if you look at any of, especially the right-wing side, because they're going to these things, like, granted, they're going to be biased as well. They're going to go out and they're going to ask questions, and the signs are almost exactly the same throughout the country. The messaging is all the same. Most people can't even say why they're there, or they just say, "Oh, we're not here for kings," but then they go back against when they had the No Kings protest in Europe, they had to change it to No Tyrants because they actively had kings. So they don't even stand by that. Look at how they took the king when he came down and give his speech to Congress. And then you also now you have the activists. I guess I could even say agitators, because the ones who are burning the Waymos in California, the Summer of Love, were billions, if not billions of dollars were burned and destroyed in these mostful peaceful protests as the media covered up, and it continued on, and it's radicalized so many people. Look at all the attempts that have been made on Donald Trump's life by that right now. Where I think we're at what, 3? So Butler shot his ear. The crazy guy outside the his golf course, which Secret Service did a very good job and finished off and secured the area, and were able to capture him. And then even the insane, once again, the insane teacher who went from California, booked a room for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, loaded up on ammunition, knives, guns, and tried to make his way in. Hopefully we see more of what radicalized him as much as it did. So we're seeing these NGOs activists, we're seeing them try to like shut down. But remember, if it's a Democrat versus a Democrat, or a Democrat wins, most cities don't burn, right? No, there wasn't a single business out there who boarded up their windows in fear of the 2020 election, of when Donald Trump lost, that that they were going to go through and burn down the cities. That didn't happen. Oh, well, the Jan 6 riots. Should it have happened? No. However, we're once again seeing it played by the media again and again, the small fraction that were violent. The majority of people were brought into the Capitol and were escorted around, and they were actually peaceful. But we're seeing the same clips played over and over again from the media of the exact same day. Remember, there were no police who were killed that day. There was no one else who was killed that day, except for one Republican supporter. So that, compared to the extreme damage that has been done by the left, is actually kind of insane. And all the money that they brought with it. He went through and asked about the politically left-aligned incidents that cut out like the white supremacists and more or less the Nazis and all the other people who were kind of cut out from, who's not really right-leaning, they're just extremists. Because like you really wouldn't include a terrorist attack in left-wing violence, just like you wouldn't include a anti-Semitic attack as right-wing, or even the Nazis ish on the right-wing side. Having them do attacks doesn't make sense if you're not going to include the left-wing political violence. But through riots and sustained unrest, there were attacks on ICE facilities, arson, firebombings, vandalism on pro-life centers, churches, and political buildings, shootings and assassinations, political figures, vehicle rammings of ICE vehicles, Tesla facility, and vehicle attacks, which actually I would argue that more or less broke Elon Musk. You saw him become more and more of a damaged man as he continued on in the Trump administration, watching everything that he built just get burned by the left. And the left used to love him as being a tech giant and moving for the renewable cars. They loved him for the rockets. They loved him for everything that he was doing until he started coming out as a right wing. Once again, as soon as they start coming out as right is when the media narrative will flip. So the left wing incidents were documented across 20 plus U.S. states, spanning riots, arsons, shootings, ambushes, and coordinated attacks. Targets including government facilities, law enforcement, businesses, religious institutions, and individuals. And then the FBI and DHS have opened domestic terrorism investigations into many of these cases. The right wing only has one, and that's January 6th, which resulted in assaults on police, vandalism, and disruption of the electoral certification. It was limited only to January 6th. It was nowhere else in the country. No other right-wing incidents meeting the same criteria were found in verified reporting during this period. Significant fewer incidents, lower severity overall, and no ongoing sustained violence campaigns. And this is from 2017 to 2026. With the sources coming from the Associated Press, Reuters, FBI, DHS, DOJ, local police departments, court documents, press releases, and other verified news outlets. And it was through May of 2026. So we continue to see that the left-aligned instance would also, not surprisingly enough, include the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He was out speaking his mind, having conversations. He was pretty respectful to everyone who came to the mic, to the point that he would lower the mic down, that way he could listen to what points they were made and actively allow himself to be in part of the conversation, which you don't see nowadays. Now all you see, especially coming from the left, is they don't listen to what you're saying, they listen to reply, and very often it's equivocation. It's they pivot to a different topic completely, or they just flat out can't are set in their ways even when shown provable evidence. So the more and more we see this is happening, that conversations aren't going the way they are, and it's the same thing that, like, you can't argue with a Muslim saying that the Quran was not Allah's word. They will go hell bent on it, and no matter what you do to prove that it's not or say that it's not, that is the word of Allah, and that's the end of it. It's getting to the point with the left, in which case talking doesn't work. But as long as you're able to still have these conversations and move forward in policy and not just bring in equivocations, pivoting, and not able to get to the root cause of problems, we still have a way forward. I think Charlie Kirk was very good with that, and you know that he made a big difference. He was mentioned by the president. He was invited to many presidential rallies. He turned a lot of young voters in these Democrat institutions, like the colleges, like the universities, and changed them into a movement to conservatism, to the right, to Republican. And for that reason alone, he was called hateful, he was called bigoted, he was called every possible thing that you could give or say to a person, until that those views that he didn't even hold were used to gun him down as he was exercising his First Amendment right to free speech, to discourse in a civilized and intelligent manner. So with that, I think it's worth bringing back the memory of Charlie Kirk. Don't ever forget him. Continue on praying for his family, his daughters. Don't forget that the left is continuously brainwashing your friends, your family, your kids, and having them come out and do these acts. So pray for our country, pray for the help of people who are out there and having these conversations and staying civil and trying to move the country in a good manner. And I think that's the end of it. I need to go to bed.
Possible to say, you know what, I don't like the way the country is going, and to do something about it. Take that risk, take that leap of faith, stay involved, trust God, and act obediently. Romans 12:2 verse, that God will use all things for good for those who love him. It's bigger than you. I want you to remember that. It is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. You are here to make somebody else's life better, the pursuit of liberty and freedom. You know what gives me strength? The hundreds of thousands of you that say, Charlie, keep going.
1 Corinthians 5 and 15. So that's all pretty amazing evidence, not just intra-biblical evidence, but extra-biblical evidence that Jesus Christ was a real person. He lived a perfect life. He was crucified, died, and rose on the third day, and he is Lord and God of all.